so much. I love you so much. I love you so much. I love you so much.
Hello, all you positive heads. Welcome to a very special episode dedicated to none other than you, the P-heads themselves. I am your P-head enthusiast and hostess for the day, Alexa Hauser. I have been blessed to have the experience of helping out with Positive Head's social media for the better part of a year. And through my digital interactions, I began to realize, as did Brandon, that we have some incredible beings listening to this show who are taking the information that Brandon puts out through the podcast and using it to transform their lives and create wonderful things. You listeners are all a huge, huge part of the life force that propels this show forward through time and space, and we think it's time to bring forth some of you beautiful reflections and delve a little deeper into this collection of energy that is the Positive Head community. So as we shine the spotlight on our listeners, what we'll have them do is share their stories of how they attracted Positive Head into their life, the transformation it's facilitated for them, and what they're focused on creating now that they're in a more positive headspace. Also, this episode of the Positive Head podcast is being brought to you thanks to the support of Gaia. If you're not familiar, Gaia is the go-to source for streaming consciousness content online. And you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents at gaia.com/positivehead. That's spelled GAIA.com/positivehead. Check it out. Hello, all you positive heads. Welcome to a very special P-Head Posse episode hosted by me, Alexa Hauser, where we feature you, the amazing listeners of this podcast, and hear your story, find out how you came to be a part of the awesome collective that is the P-Head audience, and learn about what you're doing, what you're making and creating with this wealth of information Brandon puts out into the universe 5 days a week. Today, our guest is Positive Head listener Sam Buchanan. Sam is a director, set designer, playwright, theater artist, storyteller, LARPer, and spiritualist with an interesting perspective on the role that love and shame plays in today's society. Hi, Sam. Welcome to the show.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Well, I'm really interested to have this conversation with you, but, tell us a bit about yourself. How did you find the podcast?
Well, like many have said, it was a simple Google search or typing into the podcast app search. I had just finished another spirituality-based series called Mindful Living, Spiritual Awakening, and it had ended. It was supposed to end, and I needed something to kind of keep me in the headspace, especially on my commute. So I stumbled upon this.
Awesome. Yeah, I love how just a simple search in Apple Podcasts or just a simple search has brought everyone to this, amazingly powerful community. It's really awesome.
It is.
Yeah. Well, so tell us, you and I have talked offline a bit, but why don't you, tell the listeners, share with the listeners your story and what you were, excited to talk about here with them.
Okay. Well, first thing I have to kind of get out of the way for this story to make sense is that my partner and I, we just got married today.
Wow! Congratulations!
We woke up early this morning and we went and got married. So I'm really excited. It's been a great day.
That's amazing! Congrats! Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. But so with that in mind, we're polyamorous, and what that means is it's not an open relationship in the terms that society likes to think about it, but we are open to the idea of romantic interest outside of the confines of our established relationship. Mm-hmm. We do not believe that love is a limited resource and that it can be shared with multiple people. we also find that it keeps us more honest, more in check with each other in relationships in the past. And I've seen a lot of relationships destroyed by some very innocent misunderstandings. You know, a work friend sends a flirty text and you don't tell your partner about it because, I mean, it's innocent. You have no intentions of cheating. But when they found out that they perceive it as a dishonesty if that isn't shared. And so that is a fear-based response from the person receiving the flirty text or receiving this extra relationship attention. And it's another fear-based response from the partner who perceives it to be dishonest. And so what I found is when we moved into this model of relationship, that so many of my fear-based impulses and my fear-based like questions that nag in relationships, they just vanished, instantly melted away.
Yeah.
And that was a beautiful thing. And if this relationship model isn't for you, polyamory isn't for you, the ultimate message there, or what I'm trying to get across, is that honesty is like the bread and butter of a relationship.
Right. Absolutely. I don't know if I'm jumping in here, cutting you off, but, you know, when you messaged me and were sharing your story with me a bit, it really resonated with me and really stood out to me as like something that I really wanted to include in this series, because we talk about love and relationships a lot on the podcast. Brandon talks about it a lot. You know, he has some interesting perspective on it. And I think, you know, just to give a little bit of background on me, you know, I've always kind of felt, up until recently, I've always been so fearful of abandonment in my relationships. I've always kind of like jumped ship the second that something went, I felt like I was going to be abandoned, you know, in the past. And after, you know, having my own awakening, and especially after being a part of this show and really understanding, you know, what's going on here, and understanding love versus fear and everything that you were just mentioning, you know, that understanding and that realization dawned on me as well, as especially recently, is like, wait, what's wrong with loving other people? What's wrong with sharing love? It's like we have this, it's like love and loving anyone but the one person that you've designated as the one person to love, you know, which is, I guess, quote unquote, standard in our society. It is so shamed and so like made out to be almost the worst thing you could possibly do. And I personally feel that, especially for my own experience, that has been like a really heavy burden that I've carried around a lot of my life. And I just wanted to echo what you're saying, and echo and just add on that, you know, I really am starting to see that the other perspective and the bigger picture, if you will, of that love is love, you know, love is love. And there's so many different ways to express it and share it. And I really do feel like our society is moving towards a more expanded perception of what love can be. And so I really think this perspective that you're sharing here and your story, it's so important. And and like you said, it may not be for everyone, and everyone might not be there yet, but you know, I just wanted to put out there that like, I'm someone who was on the other end of the spectrum. Like I could never even imagine any sort of like openness in this area. And now I'm really starting to see, like, would that be the worst thing in the world? No, it's love. It's love. It's meant to be shared, you know? So anyway.
Well, yeah, no, that's beautiful. And, and like you have deeper relationships with it, and you have if say my now husband, has, he doesn't currently, but say he does find another romantic interest, that's another person that like I can love, and like, and maybe not in a romantic sense or in a sexual sense, but in a, you are another human being, like that is someone else that I can give love to. And that is just so beautiful to me.
Yeah. I love that. I love that perspective, because that's what I'm talking about. It's like when we really think about it, it's like because we've been taught to think about it in this way of like, oh, this person is, if another person comes into the picture, they're threatening you and they're threatening this, and they're going to, they're made out to be this like evil or, like the enemy. And it's not, it's what you just said. It's like a beautiful thing, right?
It's a gorgeous thing. And, you have these moments where, that old saying, oh, no one wants to message me or no one wants to talk to me or get romantic with me until I'm already in a relationship. Well, that's the laws of attraction.
Exactly.
That's what's happening right there. And when, once again, I'll say, I keep flip-flopping between like, oh, this isn't for everyone, but it's just so, like, I don't even have words for it. Like, it's just so honest. It's just so plain. It's just so true.
Yeah, it is. It is. That's why I really like your story really popped out to me, because I don't think that a lot of people are talking about this in this way. And I don't think that, and I think it's, like I said, I can see that it's something that's going to come to the forefront, and something that's going to be questioned and, have expanded perspectives brought to it. But I really, what you're saying about when you're already in a relationship too, and then all of a sudden other people pop up. Yeah, that's law of attraction, because, right? Like and what's wrong with it? Go ahead.
It's just from my perspective, where I'm kind of trying to take a weird middle road, even though I'm incredibly biased, it's, if you can't, that's resistance too. And we're trying to live our lives without resistance. So if you're in this relationship and this law of attraction starts firing off and someone wanders into your life, it's better and vibrationally better and spiritually better to allow that person in.
Right. Because who's to say, and everyone is entitled to live the life that they choose to live. Everyone's entitled to live as closed off or as open, right, as they want, right?
Right.
But really, I think what we're all working toward is exactly what you just said, is an expanded, as open and expanded as we can be. And this is a big area which is currently very limited, in most people's eyes, I think. And I'm very interested to see how this transitions. But yes, I'm with you.
It is something that it's so unusual in society. Like, my mom had a stronger reaction to finding out that I was polyamorous than she did to finding out I was gay. And I live in Mississippi.
Right. Right. That says something about people's perspectives about it. Right.
Yeah, it is.
And what do you think it is that people fear? I mean, that might be an obvious question, but I'm interested. What do you think really is?
They fear that loss, and they fear, and especially in long-term relationships, so much of your energy gets intertwined, and it gets intertwined into finances and vehicles and houses, and it gets entwined in the physical realm as much as it does in the spiritual sphere. And people are so afraid of having that uprooted, or not so much having that uprooted, but almost having it transplanted. They're worried about their husband, wife, partner becoming someone else's, and then that makes that car someone else's. And what about the house? And if your relationship, includes children, then what about the kids? It just, it becomes it becomes sort of like this cage of fear where, and so much of it now is there's so much on TV, and we are, and coming from like a theater background and me being involved in that, like we're so into our entertainment now, and the reason things are entertaining to us is because of the conflict, and we are drawn to that, and we want that, and because it's what we observe, we expect that. We expect a disaster to happen to us.
Right. Or, you know, speaking of entertainment, I mean, what's like the most common contrast you see on TV in any sort of like series or anything? It's all like romantic drama, basically. Like, oh, this person came into the picture and now there's an issue, and it's always like an issue about love. Right. It's
always like movies that have no business having a romantic subplot have a romantic subplot.
Yeah, exactly. Just to make it relatable, right?
Yeah, you know? just to bring it home, and
right.
and that's nice, and that's good, and that's entertaining, but it sort of needs to stay there.
Right.
There was actually a movie that just came out about, you know, polyamory, and this Professor Marston and the Wonder Woman. And it is about sort of his life and his relationship with his wife and one of his students, and how like the hero Wonder Woman was kind of born out of that. So that's just a little extra something.
Yeah. Well, so I have a question, you know, I mean, just going back to what we were talking about, the reason people fear, you know, like polyamory or opening up the relationship a bit is, you know, because of the loss and all of that. And so what is your perspective on that in reality? Is that a reality? What is the reality of opening up a relationship? And because, you know, I think a lot of us don't know what that's like. Maybe we wonder about it, but you know, there's only a percentage of the population that I'd say that really knows what that's like. So what is it like?
Well, I've been on both ends of the spectrum. When I first discovered I was polyamorous, it was in a bit of a blunder that I am working through some shame with it. I met a friend at work who was sexually interested in me, and him and his partner were open to that. His partner was a traveling teacher and was away for the semester, and my partner was interested, and so we engaged in a sexual-based relationship with me, my partner at the time, and my work friend. And through that, me and my work friend, we really became interested in each other, and we fell in love, and it was hard and fast and dirty. And so when that happened, I did what people do in that situation. I tried to hide it. And my partner at the time, me and him are no longer together, due to how this all shook out. We're still friends. I still love him. I wish him the best, but we are not compatible romantically anymore. And when he found out about this, we fought, but ultimately he was willing to try it. But that deceit had already been laid down, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't remove that. And part of my own doing too. It's a lot to try to move past that, because, like you said, cheaters are vilified. We're almost the worst of the worst. I mean, be a drug dealer before you be a cheater. Like it's one of those things that's so low down there. And but we tried it for a while, and during that time period, my romantic friend's partner returned, and spiritual blunder ensued, and the whole thing kind of fell apart. I found, while I was still with my previous partner, I met someone else, and it was my first polyamorous relationship outside of the confines of one that had began in infidelity.
Right.
And that's the partner we just got married today.
Right.
And so, and I'm really happy about that. But, what I'm saying is how it is in reality with my partner now. And we began our relationship with this model present. We began this already knowing sort of what to expect. There were lots of talks about it. And with him, it's been beautiful and amazing and a model of what that type of relationship should look like.
Right.
And like it's I'm happier than I've ever been.
And is it, but in the example that you just gave, I'm just trying to clarify because so what is it like in terms of allowing other people in? Because as we talked about before, that's the fear, right? That's the fear of people of like, well, what if this other person comes in and what if they take my spot? Or like, what if my partner likes them more than me? Or what if all this stuff we have together goes away? Is that a reality in my experience?
No, it is not. It is not reality. It is what we tell ourselves is reality. The way it happens is you love people for different reasons. And it's not this idea that one person can provide more for you. They provide different things for you.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And you don't have a limited supply of that love to dish out. What does end up happening, though, is in relationships, especially long-term relationships, you get to this real comfortable point where I'm not trying to bash love or anything, but you almost become furniture to each other. Oh, hey, how you doing? Mm-hmm. Yeah, we woke up again. No, how's dinner? And you just get into this pattern, and that fire, that romantic spark can kind of die. It doesn't mean that you're less committed to one another. It just means that you're not suffering, but it's called NRE, or new relationship energy. And It's very strong. It's very fast. It can make or break. How you handle NRE makes or breaks your whole relationship.
Right.
And where the fear manifests is when that NRE, that new relationship energy, comes from someone else, and one partner is hit with it, and suddenly that fire is active again, but it's not necessarily, but it's active again, but not in their primary relationship. And it doesn't mean you love each other any less, but it just means that this is how this energetic wave is coming right now.
Right. And so how does that end up shaking out? Is it just kind of like, because I've been kind of thinking about it as, okay, for example, if your partner gets really, like, let's say your partner just in a normal relationship, let's say suddenly gets really into a new sport, like that they're like, let's say they get really into working out all of a sudden when they never were before, and they suddenly just like feel the fire of working out and they're totally into it and it's totally lighting them up. And it's like, that's just like a hobby. That's just like something that they're doing and it's totally lighting them up and satisfying them. And you as the other partner have nothing to do with that. And you're not a part of, like, you're not a part of that energy as you're, talking about. But they're getting satisfied from something. And so I've kind of tried to like take that and apply it to relationships. And it's kind of the same thing. It's just that it involves another person, not a hobby. You know what I'm saying? Is it like that?
It is almost exactly like that. It's this idea of you have to love your partner enough to want them to have that experience. Right. You have to love them more than you are afraid of them. And if you love them, you you want them to be loved and you want them to feel love. And if that comes from another person, that doesn't mean that you have failed as a partner. That doesn't mean that doesn't mean that at all.
Right.
And so you have to come. That's one of the hardest demons of it, is looking at that face to face and accepting I haven't done anything wrong. Because my partner has this energetic rush for someone else does not mean I have failed. It means that they are loved stronger right now and I love them. So let me let that love in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it really, okay, that's because that's what I was thinking, it's kind of even the same thing as like when someone hangs out with a new friend. It's like, I mean, some people can get possessive over friends, I guess, but
it's the exact same thing. And I have had friends that are incredibly that are incredibly, possessive. And it's the exact same thing to like, well, especially with me being gay and most of my friends are straight males, they sometimes don't see the bout, like how those are energetically different sometimes. Like they just see my partner or my husband is like, oh, he's just one of the guys, right? And they're like, no, it's a little different.
Yeah. Well, the only, I mean, it is different in your level of relationship. And to me, like what the real difference is the, sexual nature, I guess, of your relationship. Like the difference between you hanging out with different friends and you having a polyamorous relationship is like that you're engaging sexually with them, which for some reason in our society is like a whole different, it changes everything. Like the second that, I mean, if you think about it, it's even going back to all those TV dramas and stuff, the second that two people feel like a sexual connection, it changes everything. And it's like, that's kind of what I've been finding interesting about this topic as I've been thinking about it from a broader perspective. I've been like, but what is really that different about that part of it? Not that it's just another aspect of a relationship. It's not, it's the same thing as if like, me and my friend really love to play like tennis together or something. And we have like an awesome, like competitive, like energy together. And I don't have that with one of my other friends, but like, do you get what I'm saying? It's just another energy transfer. That's it. Like but it's so charged. Like the idea of sexual intimacy or, engagement in any way is such a charged idea in our society that it like suddenly it's like changes everything once you bring that into the picture. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of how I've been like looking at it and just kind of trying to think about it in a broader way.
Well, that NRE, that new relationship energy, is one of the strongest, like just pure raw energies we can experience. Like it's almost like a drug. Like men have killed for it. Right. It is ridiculously powerful.
Right.
And it's all about, okay, this is amazing right now. And I know this is amazing right now, but don't do anything you're going to regret, and try to maintain your head, because there is another side to this energy. Like that part of the relationship or that energy burst will fade out. Right. And it's no one's fault that it fades out. It's the nature of it.
Well, do you listen to Abraham Hicks? I mean, if you listen to the show, you have to kind of through the show.
Very recently, I have listened to a lot of Abraham Hicks. Yes. Okay.
Well, so I'm an Abraham Hicks super fan, and I just really love their perspective on everything. And anyway, I've been recently listening to, they talk about this a lot, about relationships and about why. Anyone who comes to sit in the chair and ask them about relationship, they basically every time are like, when you first fell in love, what falling in love is you using the other person as your excuse to decide to feel really awesome, like, and just tell yourself you're feeling amazing and you love that person, and what you're really saying is you love yourself. Like you're using them as your excuse to be quote unquote in love, in the vibration of love. And it's natural that as time goes on, when you see someone every day, you start to kind of notice less of the awesome things that you noticed in the beginning and more of the, oh, you didn't do the dishes, or you said this, or whatever. You start to notice more of those things. Therefore, law of attraction, you're bringing more of that to you until eventually that's what you're noticing. And you're not noticing any of the stuff that made you fall in love with them to begin with. Or made you fall in love with yourself in the relationship to begin with. So, what they say is it's really like our lazy focus, not saying that, that one person is all we're supposed to be with for forever. They definitely, say that like love, they have a broader perspective of love as well. But, just to that point, they call us lazy focusers, and that we just kind of stop paying attention to the beautiful parts of people and we start noticing the things that drive us crazy. And then that's why we decide that, oh, we're out of love, or we need something else, or, like this person's not doing it for me anymore. And of course, like there are certain times when people have to split and maybe it's just time for a new person or whatever. But, it's going back to what you're talking about with the like NRE, the new relationship energy. What that really is like us deciding to be in love, right? Like it's like us deciding to like be in that energy. And so really like what they always say is like we can revive any relationship like just by focus, but so I'm just bringing that into the conversation because it's another interesting dynamic of it, like.
Oh yeah, no, this is a maze of interesting studies between like how things work energetically versus how we're sort of taught things should work, and it just completely flips it on its head. And just once I got a glimpse of how these energies move and how I react to them and how my partners react to them, it just completely destroyed the relationship model basis that I had been taught all my life, just like ripped it apart.
Yeah. And so what do you see for the future? If you were to look 25 years, maybe even 50 years into the future, do you see a big difference in this area of our society, or?
I do see it changing and moving more towards this style, because I see it in my friends who aren't polyamorous. I start to see it in my monogamous friends, and a lot of times it manifests as a kind of a kinky thing. It manifests as a sex thing. But I know, like, my mom and like that generation would never have been into any sort of like sharing or openness with partners, like no matter what, under any circumstance. And that kind of goes back. And now we are learning to be less ashamed of the things that we enjoy, be that sexually or, any sort of way. And as a collective consciousness, we are starting to kind of lose that.
It's funny that you brought up, like your parents' generation, because I forget who said this, but I heard some teacher said something that every generation is the previous generation's answered prayer, essentially. Like all the things that they felt trapped about, all the things that they couldn't figure out, that they kind of were asking for but didn't know how to let it in, is what the next generation brings, because then we come in and then we allow it, essentially. And so, but what's different about our generation, or this generation, this time of awakening, is that especially with like, podcasts like this and teachers like Abraham Hicks, we're learning how to allow it now, what we want. We're learning how to, we don't have to wait till the next generation brings it in. We can bring it in now by understanding how the universe works, understanding law of attraction, understanding that by asking, we're creating. And we can align with that now, which is why it's like, this generation is so, and why they say like we wanted to be born now and be in this energy now, because this is kind of the most like transformative generation. Like we had a taste of the old energy and now we know how to like move into the new energy. And so it's interesting to think about when applying to this topic,
Well, it was something that, speaking of, changing energies and wanting to live in it now, like even when I was a teenager, like the idea of the American dream, wife, kids, dog, like that terrified me. I didn't want that. That looked like Leave It to Beaver to me, and Leave It to Beaver was boring. Like, and I didn't want my life to be boring.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you. I mean, when I was younger, I wanted all those things. I wanted the husband, I didn't want the white picket fence necessarily, but I like wanted those things. And I think I wanted them so badly because I felt so insecure when I was younger. And now as I'm feeling more and more secure, it's like I definitely want kids. Like, absolutely. That's so important to me. And I love my relationship. But it's, and I will get married, I think. But I think if I was born in like the next generation, I don't know. And I mean, I guess that might be weird to say. Like, I guess that's like a interesting admission on my part. But it's like, I know what you're saying. Like now as I'm becoming more and more aware, I'm kind of more like, I don't need to fulfill that exact cookie cutter vision, like exactly. I want my life to be a little more dynamic and open. And so, yeah.
Well, you want it to flow and you want it to feel natural and you want it to feel right. And I just knew at a very early age that wasn't right for me.
Right. Yeah, exactly. All about tuning into yourself, and everybody is, even though even like the members of this group, we're all kind of sharing a common message and ideology. It's like we also are so different and have such different paths, and are meant to have different paths and express ourselves differently. So, well, speaking of, Positive Head in the community, just what influence has Positive Head had on your life, listening to this podcast?
Well, during my first few episodes I listened to, there wasn't a ton of synchronicity, but it was more of those things. One of those things I was like, okay, that's good information. I like that. That's something I'm going to try to practice. But then as I kept listening, if it wasn't so beautiful, it would have been disturbing because eventually it started talking to me. Yeah. Well, especially there was one episode, I can't remember which one it was, but it was the most recent tapping episode.
Yes.
And he was talking about Brandon was describing an acting method that I studied. He never mentioned the name, but he was describing the Meisner method. And it was something I had studied extensively in college. And and it's not something you hear. It's not something you pick up in everyday conversation. Someone sitting around the water cooler discussing the Meisner method. And like, it was just one of those things. And like, I woke up that morning before I listened to it. I was like, okay, it's going to be synchronicity today. Let's go. It's just going to pop off everywhere. And that was the first thing that I experienced.
Yeah. Isn't it great when you tell yourself, like when you can connect those dots too and be like, okay, I decide, I kind of like made a little decision that like I was going to see some synchronicity, or that like this day was going to be like this. And then it really is like that. Shows you how powerful your internal decisions are. But yeah, this show has I agree. As the more you listen to this show, the more synchronicity it is. Every morning when I wake up, I'm like, okay, what's going on in my life? Because it's going to be reflected in this episode, basically like 100%. So
what I love about it, though, is I love Brandon's faith in the process, where he describes, the best way to introduce this show to your friends is have them listen to episode 1 to current episode number, or have them pick a number in between that and have them, and his faith in that. And as you keep listening to him explain that process to you, of tell you what to do, how to introduce someone to this, his sheer faith in that passes on to you. And so if you're someone who's just now getting in to this mode of thinking, or just now exploring your spirituality, that faith right there, that this is going to work, just is a huge blockage remover. Just like, God.
Yeah. I agree. I love that about the show. And I love, I love that, I mean, have you done that?
Oh yeah, multiple times too. And like I said, if it wasn't beautiful, I would be creeped out. Yeah, because I'm like, get out of my head. But no, stay. It's nice. Talk to me.
Oh, I like that. The show is talking to you.
It is.
It definitely is. Definitely is. It has a life of its own for sure. I mean,
it definitely has an energy of its own that is greater than the sum of its parts.
Yes, indeed. Well, speaking of that, how would you like to see the Positive Head community expand? Are there any ideas you'd like to throw out into the collective?
Yes. Okay. So, and I've thought, I didn't think a long time about this question. It came when I read your your prep questions.
Oh, you're giving away that I give people prep questions.
Sorry, cut me out. Sorry.
No, just kidding. No. Danny, you can keep it in. Go ahead.
When I read that, I was like, oh, here's the thing. And I see this. I'm a member of a few different spiritual communities on Facebook, and this is sort of a recurring theme I see. I see it less so in Positive Heads, but I've seen it from time to time. And it is people wanting to experience ego death, or wanting to like get rid of their ego and shun their ego and, try to break away from the ego. And I'm like, no, don't demonize the ego. Yeah. Love the ego. Like, the ego is a very small child who is trying its best to protect you. Like, please, how can you not love that being?
Yeah. The ego is how we are individuals, isn't it? Like, that's what makes us individuals. Like, without the ego, we couldn't identify.
Well, that was that, and like, we can't exist in third dimensional space without it. Right. And so you're stuck with it. Love it.
Right. Right. You can't not love any part of yourself and be whole.
It is a small child that you have got to just show love to. And like what Brandon says, like, what you resist persists. So don't try to kill it, and don't try to escape it. Learn to live with it. Learn to love it.
Yes. Good insight there. Very good insight. And I've thought that same thing too. I see a lot of I see a lot of posts like that of people saying, tell me how to kill the ego. It's like, it's there for a reason. So I agree. Let's embrace that. That's nice. Well, so what is one thing that you think would benefit every P-head to know or understand as they continue on their own journey?
Well, that little bit about the ego there, but I also want to plug another podcast. I don't know if there's like, I don't feel like there's a competitive energy here, so I feel like that's sure. Okay.
Why not?
But I mentioned it in the opener. It's Mindful Living, Spiritual Awakening by Dr. Mary Jo Puleo, and it's what sort of set me. It came to me very shortly after my first huge awakening, and it was synchronistic with my spiritual growth, to the point where I'm listening to stuff and I just got into it. I'm like, okay, in this smorgasbord of spirituality, this part maybe isn't for me. And this podcast comes to me and it's like, well, have you tried that yet? Because you might really be into that thing you just passed by. And I was, and I always was. And the same thing is happening with Positive Heads. And this just seems like this is a great continuation for me. But like I said, the other podcast, it focuses more on sort of how oneness is. It's more like a textbook. It's more like a guidebook. And it has a completely different energy than Positive Heads, but still one of love and light. But it is trying to, I don't want to say that Positive Heads isn't trying to educate, but like education seems like its prime motive.
Right. every podcast has a different tone and different kind of theme running through it. So I totally know what you mean.
Yeah, so I greatly recommend that. And anything else just going forward, just be open to what the universe throws at you and always ask yourself, am I responding from the ego? Am I being impulsive? Am I reacting? And if you can just get in this habit of checking back in with yourself, talk to the ego. How you doing, ego? Someone made you mad at work? Okay. Well, don't show it so much. Don't brood so much. It's okay. People love you. And I find that those moments where you kind of have to talk the ego down are like really beautiful, spiritually growing moments for me, because when you're doing that, when you're talking the ego down from like a weird ledge, or when you're talking the ego back emotionally, at that moment, you are at the perspective of your higher self. And so at that moment, you create a bridge between your physical form and the higher self by that communication.
I love that. That's such an interesting way to think about that. Yeah, that's great. That's great insight. Well, so I didn't ask you this, but what are you working on now? Is there anything specific that you're working on that you'd like to throw out there, or is there any way that people can contact you if they'd like to, talk about this more or have questions for you?
Yeah, you can always reach out to me on Facebook. I'm a member of the community, just Sam Buchanan. Right now, what I am working on is the nature of theater is very locally based. But right now I'm working on a production of Noises Off. It's a British comedy farce. It's hilarious. So I'm working on that, and I'm trying to launch into more of like a digital playing space. I have a small group, and we call ourselves the Bottom of the Barrel Players. You can find us. We have a Facebook group. You can find us there. And we're semi-active. We're kind of active. And I'm looking to try to do more with that, trying to get into the new generation of entertainment, and theater seems incredibly resistant to that. So I'm trying to kind of
what do you mean
push it?
What do you mean play space, like players? You mean like you guys are doing like digital content, like entertainment?
Not at the moment, but we're in the conceptualization phase of providing some digital content. At this moment, we're just brainstorming and we're writing scripts. We're hoping to launch a podcast and a YouTube channel, but neither one of these things are active and are more in the dream stage. So don't go looking for us just yet.
I'm sure they will manifest soon, though.
I'm sure they will.
Well, that's awesome. You'll have to keep us updated on those, and of course, share those in the group whenever they do manifest.
I definitely will.
But all right, so this is my last question for you.
Yeah.
Do you have an intention for 2018?
I do have an intention for 2018. My intention for 2018 is I want to continue my education. Right now, I'm not very pleased with the job that I am at. And to do what I want to do, I only need one more degree. So I'm going to go try to get that bad boy and kind of get my life on the road again.
What is it that you want to do? I'm curious.
I want to teach academic theater. Like I want to teach on the collegiate level. I love academic theater.
Yeah.
Like I love it more than I do like professional theater or community theater, just because you spend long hours sitting in classrooms, like talking about it and like getting down to it. And
you just really love theater, yeah?
Yeah, no, I love it. I love the nuts and bolts of it and how it moves energetically through people because it's just so raw.
Yeah, you're kind of like, all acting is kind of like, channeling in some ways, right? Like you're really like channeling characters and letting that energy flow through you, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, especially for me, as a director, it is a 3-month or 5-week long exercise in the laws of attraction. Right. Because at the end of this process, this is going up one way or another, and it's either going to be great and amazing how I'm envisioning it. But every now and then we slip up and it's not. So it's
right.
So it's always a good exercise.
Reflection. Yeah, absolutely. I love that.
Yeah, no, it's great.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Sam, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. I think this was a hugely important conversation. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how the group responds, how the listeners respond. But I think it was really, just to me, this is a really important topic, and I really loved your insight. And I think you have really important perspective. So thank you for taking the time to chat with me.
No, thank you for having me.
Awesome. Journey well.
All right, you too. Namaste.
That's it for this week's episode. If you're a listener with a story to share and are interested in being featured on a future episode of this special series, you can email me at alexa@positivehead.com. Also, if you're craving more consciousness elevating content, be sure to check out Gaia, which is the go-to source for streaming consciousness content on the web, where you can stream an incredible 7,000 plus exclusive videos covering 5,000 years of wisdom. As you all hear Brandon constantly say, it's a daily conscious effort to maintain an elevated vibration. And if you're looking to journey deep down the rabbit hole to do so, then Gaia is the best place we know of to do it. Period. And you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents at gaia.com/positivehead. That's spelled GAIA.com/positivehead. Check it out. Otherwise, tune in next Friday for another P-Head Posse episode. And until then, as Brandon always says, journey well.